Hello, welcome to PCOS Conversations with Julie and Laura. So glad to see you today. I am Julie Duffy Dillon. I'm a registered dietitian and I help people with PCOS reject diets and promote health. I'm like, what do I do? I forget. Um, but I'm happy to be here with Laura. How are you doing, Laura?
I'm okay. I was telling Julie I'm doing just okay, but I know I'll feel better by the end of this. Hi, I'm Laura Burns, and I'm a body liberation yoga teacher and activist. I don't know what my title is. Yeah, I host yoga classes and workshops and retreats, and I talk about body liberation a lot. And I have PCOS.
Um,
Ta-da!
it's like a magic trick, you know? And speaking of magic tricks, we have hopefully some transcription going on below us. So that was something that a person put in a comment that like they would like to have the words. So I'm hoping they show up. And anyway, so we are going to get started
And
with,
it's also distracting.
I know, I'm like reading it. We did test it out to make sure.
Yeah.
The cussing does come through, but PCOS does not. I just thought
Yeah.
see what happened. Anyway, so there are a few things we like to do during every episode, and one is we like to do a card pull, and we can never in my house here get the light just right. Oh,
Hold
geez.
on.
Yes, show
Oh,
you. There's almost mine. Thank you. Oh my gosh. So we have a deck of cards that have prompts that Laura and I put together. And I'm going to pick one and then we're going to talk about it.
excellent. I love the card pools.
All right.
I'm ready.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, they're all good. So we wrote it.
They're all amazing.
We've talked about this. PCOS has no gender.
Oh, yeah. That's from the original mini deck.
Yes. So it's definitely an important one. If you made the cut to the mini deck, then you were important. And PCOS
Absolutely.
has no gender is important. Have we talked about this on the show at all?
Yeah, we have. I'm pretty sure we've pulled that card before.
Okay.
Um,
Well, I wonder if we have
yeah. What?
I wonder if we have any new thoughts, you know?
I don't know. I'll tell you the thoughts that come to my head. I don't know if they're new or not. But yeah, so if you're watching this and you're like, what? PCOS does have a gender, I invite you to think about the fact that not everyone who has a uterus or ovaries is a woman, and there's lots of different ways to experience the world of PCOS. And most of the PCOS stuff that's out there is very specifically like for women, and it's like the sisters thing. And that might feel really great for some people, but I think it can feel really bad for our trans and non-binary friends who have PCOS. And so I and I know Julie really liked to, remind people and to talk about the fact that PCOS can affect anyone. It's not just something for women or cis women. Um, yeah, and I think that there is a shift starting to happen using, people with PCOS instead of women with PCOS. And to me, it's such an easy thing to change, and it's so easy to me just to say different words. And if that can help people like feel better, and if that like teaches us to like expand our awareness of people's experiences and their bodies and their experiences with PCOS, like I absolutely want to do that. I want, and our whole philosophy with the PCOS body liberation community is to be inclusive and welcoming and like a safer space for all people who have PCOS. So
Like no one is left behind.
yeah, we're not leaving anybody behind, whether you like it or not. You're with us.
And that, like connecting with this is something that has definitely changed for me over the last few years. And I feel so grateful for the people who have called me in and out on like using gender language with PCOS. Like so much gratitude in that like someone cared enough to actually like help me to see something from a different perspective. And And like you said, it's such a small thing to do. And the feedback I get whenever I use gender inclusive language is like how meaningful it is. I'm like, it is
Super.
such a small thing. And um, so if you're someone who says women with PCOS or sister, something just to pause on and like, um, and how that could actually hurt someone to use that kind of language, or just, or at a minimum, like exclude people, you know?
Yeah. And it's not like that you're a bad person if you say
No.
that at all. That's not what we're saying. And I just want to be really clear about that. I don't think that that is bad or that anyone is bad who says it. But I think that, in this world, there's so many things that are triggering or traumatic or promote shame or dysphoria. And so, like, if there's like these easy things that we can do, like, it's easy for me to just change the words that I'm using.
Yeah, yeah.
So why wouldn't I?
No, I think it's important to not get caught up too in that, like, I'm a bad person, because then
Yeah,
like I'm just tripping over myself, like it's just like, okay, thanks. And the big thing that we talk a lot about, Laura, I know, is like the shame that comes with PCOS. So why do we want to add another like heavy burden of shame for someone else with PCOS? And
mhm, yeah,
so that's important for us. And yeah.
yeah. And now is when in our show we would answer a question, but we don't have any questions this time. So I encourage you, if you're watching this, and I mean you,
That was
you're
kind
not
of creepy.
me. I'm talking to you. I would love if you could just stop, press pause if you want, and just put in the comments below a question, something that you're wondering about PCOS, about treatment, about Julie, about me, about our work, about any of it, because we love answering questions and we haven't had any for the past couple times. So I want your questions. I'm so excited to answer them, and it like really makes me happy. So make me happy. That's so rude. Make me happy.
Asking for what you need. And something that we've gotten some comments that have been fun to read. I know that's something whenever we get one, we're like, oh yeah, there's a comment. And I know that Laura and you and I have talked about how we're so glad that we're connecting to people, and like how people are getting a lot out of these conversations. So but yeah, like include the questions. We want to make it even better for you.
Yeah, and if you have topic requests, like a whole topic to add to the box, let us know, because I can put it in here and we'll talk about it one day. So
So shall we go to the box?
yeah, so let's go. Let's just go to the box. So this is my fun box of topics covered in stickers. We've got our post-it note topics in here. So we'll draw. What's it gonna be? Oh, it was the lone pink one.
That was important for some reason, and I don't remember what it is
It
anymore.
just got added in later.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Oh, pleasure, abundance, and comfort.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice thing to add.
Mhm. I love that that was the afterthought. Pleasure,
Because we're all
abundance.
like shame and goop, but then abundance and warm fuzzies. That's the one that's like, oh yeah, we probably want to add that.
Yeah.
And
So
maybe
yeah, so
not right. I mean, maybe that's part of it, is like how there's so much negative, and we just thought of the negative first instead
yeah,
of pleasure and abundance.
yeah, I think that's exactly it, probably. So let's dive in. There's so much to unpack there. Pleasure, abundance, and comfort. All three of those are such loaded topics. I think when you are a person with PCOS, if you're in a fat body, if you are a person of color, especially if you are a Black person, what I jump to is and this is like a real downer considering that this is like a nicer topic, but like I jump to the fact that like I don't remember what study it was, but there was this thing that came out and it talked about how medical personnel, like whatever percentage, like really believe that Black people don't feel pain in the same ways. And so then if you think about like a Black body that has PCOS, maybe a fat body, because fat bodies, it has like kind of the same thing where they believe fat bodies don't feel pain in the same way. So imagine you're a fat Black person and then you have PCOS and you're experiencing maybe pain, you're experiencing whatever symptoms, and to be treated in ways that are physically and emotionally painful. I think of like comfort and pleasure. Those are things that are denied to you. And then I think everyone, like, especially if you're in a fat body, we like, it is ingrained in us. We really internalize that we don't deserve
Mm.
any of those three things. We don't deserve pleasure, abundance, or comfort.
It's like the
Um,
world tells you so frequently all the time that eventually it becomes like a truth.
Yeah, and then you internalize that and you inflict that on yourself. So the world is inflicting it on you and you do it to yourself. And I can speak from experience there. Like, I been there, done that. It was horrifying. And it's like, so then from nowhere are you getting pleasure, abundance, or comfort? And it becomes things that are just, well, those are things that aren't for me.
Mm.
For, able-bodied people, those are for thin people, those are for rich people, those are for white people, like those are, like whatever kinds of things. So that's where my mind went to immediately, which is like bummer town, but I'm also kind of grumpy today, so that's where I went first. But I think those are important conversations to have that don't get talked about as much.
Yeah, like
And so
the absence. I'm sorry, I totally have a frog in my throat. But it's the absence of these three things becomes the norm. Because when I work with people talking about food, um,
mhm,
and I'll be like, oh, you have permission to eat whatever you want. Like how how that'll just be so inaccessible. Like when you describe that as this false truth that just gets laid down over and over and over again. So then like actually having food that feels like good in the mouth and feels good in the belly, like that doesn't seem like anything that would be accessible. Yes.
this is like that conversation. Julie's food peace lesson last week in the community was talking about fat, and I what I heard most was like this experience that I had like in the 80s and 90s with like fat-free, sugar-free food. And it was always like the fat-free or sugar-free like facsimile of a food item that like would be satisfying and delicious, but it was never actually satisfying or delicious. But then I like taught myself that like, oh, this is satisfying and delicious, but it wasn't. And so that's part of something that like really triggers my binge eating, is if I don't allow myself to eat food that actually is satisfying and delicious. And I always like in the past year or so, I have mentioned a few times about how I grew up eating low fat yogurt. And I was like, I mean, it tastes fine. It tastes fine.
Yeah.
And then when not till 2009, which was not that long ago. Well, I mean, it's 2021,
Not
a
too-
long time ago, a decade ago, basically. I tried full fat yogurt and I was blown away. It was so good. And now I only buy full fat yogurt. And it's so delicious. And it's like a snack that I really enjoy eating. And it's delicious and it's really satisfying. And like that's something that, like, as basic as that is, like that's new. That's relatively new in my life.
yeah.
Like it seems like such a small thing, but like I'm like actually almost tearing up about this. Like that's like one food item. And
Mhm.
like, but it's cheese and it's milk and it's, bread and all the things that like I'm gonna fucking cry about this. That like, oh my God, like I was denied this and then also learned to deny myself these things. I spent the majority of my life not eating food that was delicious and satisfying.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
how sad is that? And so now it's like this whole new world opening up. And I still to this day will like kind of reflexively reach for the like, oh, this is, low salt, or this is, like whatever. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with like watching your sodium, right? Blah, blah, blah. You don't want to have too much sodium. But like when that's the like knee jerk reaction to picking up a whatever, a package of something, it's like, do I want that? Or is that just like what I think I'm supposed to get? And it's like in my muscle memory to like get those things. It's wacky.
It takes time to kind of discern that, right? And like, because there are some people who just are going to have a preference for
Yeah.
the lower fat yogurt or a
I
preference for lower salt
legitimately,
stuff.
I legitimately prefer Diet Coke.
Yeah. I legitimately don't. understand that I because just as a human to human, like I think I could get it in some level. But the thing that I hear from that, because what I believe that our relationship with food mirrors like all these other things in our life, all these other relationships, and how the world treats us, and like there's just so many parallels, and the way that um, it took time to like explore this different way of eating yogurt, and how it really connected with some deep parts. I don't think it was just about the yogurt. I
No.
it's like, because it probably was the same with like healthcare and like relationships. Like, well, I'm getting my needs met basically. Like a lot of rationalization, like, oh, it's fine. This is fine.
I'm
But
continually traumatized by it, but I'm getting my needs met.
yeah, but like they're doing the best they can. I can just see the yogurt is just another one of those.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Hmm.
So if you're someone who's connecting with this and you're like, okay, what do I do about it? I think about how it's going to take time to unpack it.
It takes a long time.
And you may cry over yogurt sometimes. Like just because it's like is, and not in like, I mean, I'm kind of being goofy, but also like serious, like that's okay. Because it's connecting to all these other really big, important things and structures that have been holding you back and denying you basic, like dignified care,
Hmm.
respect.
Yeah. And so this food talk makes me think about the word comfort in our prompt today. And so, like, I would love to talk about comfort food, and I bet you have a lot to say about it. I know that I was taught that, like, comfort food and, like, emotional eating was, like, the worst thing you could do. It was so bad. Like, people are like, oh, I'm an emotional eater, with shame about that. And it's only been in the past, like, maybe 15 years that I even started to say, maybe it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, cause I was always comfort eating, but like I was gonna shame myself a lot about it. And so now, like, and I'm seeing this now more like in Instagram posts and stuff, and people saying like emotional eating is fine. Like,
It's normal.
especially when the message we get is like, oh, like everyone's like, oh, in my family, like in my culture, like we really use food to show that we love each other. But then also the counter to that is don't emotional eat. Like don't eat to soothe yourself or to comfort yourself.
Mhm.
Except I use food to show people that I love them. So eat up, but don't eat for comfort. It's like,
Yeah.
what are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. And I mean, I can't imagine many cultures. I don't know. Are there any that exist that don't use food for comfort? Like, and there's a reason, like food is actually comforting because, in a way that like breathing is comforting, like we need it. So that's why it's like, not only is it something that we can spend time on and like we can provide it for others, unlike other basic human needs, but it also, we need it to survive. And I don't know, like the way that we have evolved, I think as humans, like food is comfort is part of how we stay alive. I think it's just like a normal physiological kind of connection to food. And it's fucking cool that we can do that. And yeah, I always think about that too. And when you were talking about like Instagram posts and things like that, where people are kind of starting to normalize comfort eating in a way, I still see this. Maybe I'm just like want to see it. Just we need to push it more because there still is like, if you're skinny, emotional eating is okay,
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
but not anyone in a higher weight body.
Yeah.
And that's what you and I know. We're like, no, like because really, emotional eating, comfort eating, that is all like and food behavior, that is like a normal food behavior. It always has existed and it always will. So it doesn't matter what type of body you have, you're gonna have that because that's just how we eat.
Hmm.
And to like expect someone to not is further dehumanizing them.
Yeah, it's actually cruel.
Yeah, it actually is
You
cruel.
set up the dynamic that like food is love and like that's how we show each other that we care about each other, but also don't eat for comfort, don't emotionally eat, like
Yeah.
don't derive comfort from the food, but also food is how we show love, so it's like it's literally cruel, I think, to say don't do this when we have created a culture that says do this,
Mm-hmm.
but then we're going to punish you for
Mm-hmm.
doing it. Like what? Like you can't win in that scenario.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Like it's completely ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
Um,
The thing I think about too is like the way that we've come to understand, I say we like collectively, is that food behavior that includes comfort and pleasure is just this like extra
mm,
but like what I think what we're trying to say is like, no, this is actually like a necessary, normal, important thing to have in your relationship with food to promote health and just being human. All of that. It's not this extra. It's a necessity. Yeah. So
yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, and so when I hear the word comfort, and especially if we're talking about food, like I think of comfort food, comfort eating, or emotional eating, and how demonized that is. And then it's also the idea of too much. So maybe like, oh, what you're eating is fine, but don't eat too much of that. And that's where like that abundance piece comes in,
mhm.
right? So, like, and I know we've talked about abundance on this channel before, but um, I I just like always talk about how it feels like, especially when you're a fat person, but really most people living in diet culture, um, it's always like, oh, have whatever X food, but not too much. Even if you're thin, it's like, but not too much.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's like this idea that there's an amount of something that you can eat that suddenly is shameful and awful. And I think by focusing on that, it just like makes it even more of a, I don't even know. I don't know. I'm not articulating what I'm saying well, but it's like because of the focus on that, it turns it into this thing that like gives people a complex about it,
Well, it's
So
you
it's
can't
not
trust.
just like I want ice cream, so I'm going to have, and like I want a big bowl of ice cream because that sounds great. And
Mhm.
it's like monitoring yourself then,
Yeah. You have to be careful. And yeah, we can't trust ourselves around uh,
Yeah. And you
all.
know what that is? It's fucking white supremacy and capitalism coming in to like mess with that. It's like the whole thing. Oh God, we always talk about this, like, create a system that makes us be at war with our own selves or at war with each other so that we don't have the mental capacity to realize what's the bigger thing at play here and like start a revolution and overturn that thing. And if you're listening to that and you're like, whoa, Laura, you're really going off the deep end, I'm not. I
No,
promise.
you're
I
not.
swear.
No, because here's the thing, like even the US dietary guidelines. I don't think the most recent one had this. I'll have to check, but like the one, I think they do them every 5 years. Um, and it's like, it basically tells us what we're supposed to be eating as Americans, whatever. And in the 50s, it was like, here are all the food groups, eat from all of them. That's literally what it said. Like, it was just like,
Yeah, but who's
here's the
sponsoring that?
food. What?
Who pays for that?
Well,
Where do
before it was it's always kind of been paid kind of a similar groups before, but that was like in the 50s and 60s. It was like just make sure it was really about like let's make sure we have enough to eat. And then as the tide turned to include even more explicit diet culture, like we know it's always been there, or it has been for what hundreds and hundreds of years. But the latest one, it said like eat a variety of food, but not too much. Like that was how it keyed that in. And I remember when I first read the first phrase, like eat a variety of food, I'm like, yes, it's coming back. But then it's like, but not too much. Like,
and followed up by the punch, but not too much.
yeah, don't enjoy it. Just get a couple bites in,
Don't enjoy it too much. You can enjoy it a little bit, but
Yeah.
not too. And also, I would just like to say, and this is something that is, I recognize, contentious among many people, especially on the internet, because everybody has their own opinion and people like to give it. So let me preface this with, if you don't agree with me, that's fine.
Yeah.
I may not agree with you, but I'm respectful about it. So that's what I have to say before I say this. I am of an opinion that if somebody wants to eat 20 gallons of ice cream,
Mhm.
that's fine. That's their prerogative. It is not my place to say you should not eat 20 gallons of ice cream.
Yeah.
Maybe it makes them sick. Maybe it makes them feel like garbage. Maybe it whatever, physically like does something to their body that is unpleasant. If they want to do that, that is their body.
Their body. They
Want
decide.
to do something. I get stuff about my tattoos. People don't get it. It's my body. If you don't like it, don't get a tattoo. if you don't want to eat 20 gallons of ice cream,
Yeah.
which would make, I think, anyone sick. I don't think you could
Yeah.
physically eat
People
that.
don't. Yeah, no. It
But
just
like, it's not
doesn't.
your body.
Right.
I think that we need to move away from monitoring what other people are doing with their bodies. And I say all of this very respectfully, like, have your own beliefs, that's fine. I just really am really trying not to inflict my beliefs on other people. You
Hmm.
know, like, it's fine to disagree with me, it's fine to do different things than me. I think that so much of the problems and the trauma and the pain that we deal with comes from other people putting their opinions and their stuff on us.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
For sure. Yeah. And forgetting that we're, especially with people with PCOS, like forgetting that you are an individual human who feels pain and feels pleasure, and you get to decide what you want to do to your body. And that, and for me as a practitioner, like I need to ask permission and not make assumptions, things like that.
I recognize as a dietitian, you probably don't want people eating 20 gallons of ice cream, but I think that you also respect people's body autonomy to say that like you are a human being who can make decisions for yourself.
Hmm.
I
Yeah. I
mean,
think people um, like extreme examples too, like they happen, and you know people are able to take care of the body however they want. And
yeah.
um, I'm not in their body, so how do I know what they actually need? And I can kind of be like, well, this is what other people have done. What do you want to do with that? But also, like, I think what this comes down to for the two of us and our community is like a person's agency over their body is like priority number one.
Hmm.
That
It just,
is.
it just like goes back to discussions about health for me. Like this is where it all stems from for me. It's like my definition of what is 100% health for me
Mm-hmm.
is probably other people's definition of like 75%, 60% health for them.
Mm-hmm.
To me, like my best case scenario is like somebody else's like poor health.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, it's not good, it's not bad, it just is. That's what it is. And so if we all have different definitions of health, maybe we can also take into account that maybe not everyone is striving for health, you know? So like I know I'm getting like kind of off topic here, but it all relates to me. It's all linked in my head. If I can respect that people have different desires of what to do with their body, of what to put in it, then it also means that I can stop trying to put my beliefs on them. You know what I mean? And it's been like a slow process. And I for sure, like, you know, a decade or 15 years ago was like a good fatty. And I was like, I'm fat, but my blood panel is like immaculate. And I work out and I'm a runner. And I like, and all of that was true, but I was like constantly feeling like I had to prove myself. And now like the shift to I don't owe you health
No,
feels
you don't.
fucking amazing and freeing. And like somebody may not like that am not healthy like them or that I would never aim to be healthy like them. And like that's their problem.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
yours. Yeah,
I
that's.
ask myself when I feel like, oh, they shouldn't be doing that. Why do I think that?
Mm-hmm.
Is
Yeah,
it my place to care what they're doing with their body? You
right.
know?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
That's such a great point because I think that the more that we, I don't know, I mean, I think that value of body autonomy is important, and I have to honor that everyone is going to value that. But I, it's kind of probably going against what you just said, but it's meant to not. But like, I think if we all valued body autonomy, then like there would be more room for individual like preferences and being able to meet needs, and um, there'd be less shame and crap like that.
Yeah, I mean, if everyone believed in body autonomy, I wouldn't have to have such a firm stance on this.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I
It
mean? Like,
wouldn't.
I wouldn't have to be like, okay, contentious topic. I'm going to get heated right now because we would all be coming from a place of,
Yeah.
you know, body autonomy and people having agency over their own body to make their decisions. Um, so, I mean, this is such like a bigger conversation. Like we could have a whole thing just talking about this, but like, and if tell us in the comments if you want to talk more about this, if this is interesting to you, let us know because we totally will. But this hits on all kinds of stuff like like regarding pleasure, abundance, and comfort, to bring it back to the topic.
Yeah.
Um, all of those things, there are people who I think as a reaction to the way that our world is, kind of lean into, well, I'm going to go hard. I'm going to like, do all these things that people say, I shouldn't be doing, that aren't healthy. It's not good,
Mhm.
whatever. But they're like, basically, fuck you.
Yeah, the fuck it effect.
Yeah, it's like a reaction. And so you just go really hard, you lean in that direction
Mhm.
because we've spent our whole lives being denied
Thrived. Yeah.
pleasure and abundance and comfort from others, and we were taught to deny it to ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and I think the world too, like, this what connects with body autonomy and pleasure for me is that, like, if so many people are making assumptions and deciding for other people what they have to do, i.e., health stuff, it's like, well, then you shouldn't have pleasure. If you are, you have to like
You don't deserve it.
prioritize that
You didn't earn it.
until you are, like you said, like the phrase "good fatty," like until you're doing these things, but not probably not even then, because if you're still in a higher weight body, then no, you still need to keep it.
Unless you get to, like this, like 110 pounds, or I don't know, whatever, some very small human being,
Yeah.
um, you haven't earned it.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people I've worked with over the years individually, they'll often come to me in a space where they feel like they are constantly seeking pleasure and using that as proof, in a sense of like, this is proof that I'm addicted to food, or this is proof that I can't be trusted around these foods. And as we like sift through and like peel back layers, there's like this constant threat of deprivation. And if someone's always binging, or every time they eat, that's what they would name it as, is binging. It's like, is it really permission? If you,
Yeah.
I feel like every time you eat, it feels like, oh, I'm just trying to get this pleasure and hurry up and get it while I can. I'm like, there's so many layers of deprivation at play.
There's so many things to unpack with that statement.
But that's something that I see a lot with people with PCOS, and I think it's part of the physiology of PCOS with like the high insulin levels, with lots of weight centric bullshit that
Mhm.
are saying, well, no, you can't actually succumb to these cravings, Anyway,
Yeah.
so seeking the pleasure and seeking the abundance, there's something that I don't know, I almost feel like magical and quite cheesy when I think of it, but like I do think there's something that I wish it was just more normalized to seek it
Mhm.
and then make way for other people to have access to it as well.
Yeah. I think we're really far from that, unfortunately. Because even as like a liberated fat person that I feel that I am, the like imagine, for example, I would post like an Instagram post of just like me like eating macaroni and cheese, like a big bite, and like, oh, looking like, oh, like it's so good or whatever. If you saw a thin person post that, they would get applause. If you see a fat person post that, they're gonna get trolled so
Mhm.
hard.
How dare you have something so pleasurable?
How dare you enjoy your food? You don't deserve that. You didn't earn that pleasure. Oh,
Costing me tax dollars.
yeah. Oh God. Oh,
I may have just opened up some other boxes with that one. We
oh,
probably can wrap it up.
I got like 30 minutes of stuff to say about that for sure.
Box.
Putting in the box, yeah. Um,
Oh,
yeah, this was like, I feel like I kind of took us off in another direction, but I guess that's what I wanted to talk about today.
what direction to go. I was with you on the ride. It was nice talking to you though. I think
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's time to say goodbye.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah. So, thanks if you're still here. Thanks for being here, for watching. Leave your comments in the comments below. Let us know what you thought about that, what you think about all the things. Like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe to our channel if you want to see more stuff from us. We're putting this out about every other week, and we are excited to keep going. We always have stuff to talk about, and
Yeah.
we like to end with a cheers to body liberation.
Trying to get my mug to show up.
The lineup. Oh.
No, my brain is not working. But cheers to you, and thanks for joining us today.
Bye, y'all.